Hey, 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 everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Undercurrents. Yes, 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 we got a legendary one for you today. I am so excited today for my guest. Why? Well, how often do you get to speak to a legend in NYPD history, a living legend? I mean, this is a huge honor for me today to, of course, bring on the great Detective Randy Jurgensen today. And of course, Randy's career with the NYPD is stuff of legend by now. He was integrally involved in cases that you've heard of for sure. Have you seen the movie Cruisin' with Al Pacino? Well, that's loosely based on the exploits of Detective Randy Jurgensen, and of course, he was integrally involved in as a technical advisor to such great movies like The French Connection. But of course, today we are here to talk about the one of the central incidents that happened in Detective Jurgensen's career, and of course, one of the most controversial incidents in New York Police Department history. We are talking about the Harlem Mosque Incident. And this is something that I was hip to quite a while ago by all my police friends during the Son of Sam years. And they all said, Manny, get this book, Circle of Six. You're not going to believe when you read this. And so I went out and I bought the book. And I gotta say, I was outraged by what I learned in this book. The absolute travesty of justice, the seemingly total disregard for the life of a New York City police officer by the very organization that he belonged to, the NYPD, and of course the travails of Detective Jurgensen trying to track down the killer, and when he finally found him, all the problems that he that ensued with the NYPD as well. But it kind of went on the back burner for a little while because we got busy with a lot of the Son of Sam stuff, and of course, we've been doing this Howell murder case. And in searching through the players of this Howell murder that we've been doing, the Riverdale establishment, the Riverdale elite, well, we came across one of the mayors of New York City, Mayor John Lindsay. I just the other day did some research, and well, what do you know? He was connected to the players that were involved in this Harlem Mosque incident. And I mean the deep players. We're talking about potential deep state players here. So it is a super, super interesting to me. And I could not be happier to have on the following gentleman because you know what I always say, it ain't about me. It's about we. So everybody put your hands together for the one. Moet, I think you're going to want to be sitting down for this one. The only Detective Randy Jurgensen. There he is. How are you, Randy?
Fine, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, it's our pleasure. A total, absolute honor. Thank you
A lot
for.
of a lot of this is the responsibility or the workings, obviously of you, but also of my son-in-law, Steve Brienza.
Of course, we can not forget to mention the great Steve Brienza, who's acting as your manager, and he's doing a great job, I must say. We got in touch with him to set up this interview, and the guy couldn't have been more professional and super helpful, super nice guy. So yes, Steve Brienza, and maybe we'll get up his website to his management company in the chat at some point. So Randy, and of course you've given me permission to call you Randy because otherwise I would never dream of doing that.
Stop.
So of course we have a lot to discuss, and this Harlem Mosque incident is something that's really bothering me, not only as a New Yorker, but as a student of history, as a student of the deep state and all of their evil underdoings. And of course, we have a lot of peripheral players that interest me in this story: the Black Liberation Army, and the Farrakhan people, Nation of Islam, and all sorts of people like that. But it all basically boils down to this gentleman right here. Please tell the audience who we're looking at right here.
You're looking at Patrolman Phil Cardillo, who was writing a sector in the 28th precinct, and with his partner, they both had 5 years on the job, and you don't work in the 28th precinct for 5 years without having the 50-yard stare, if you know what I mean.
Now, well, so what, you're just so immune? What does that mean? You're just so immune to the evils of the world?
Oh, they've seen it all, done it all, experienced it all firsthand, up front. And that generally happens 6 or 7 months into the 28th precinct.
Now, just for the sake of the people in the audience who don't know about New York and the precincts, so the 28th precinct is located where?
Well, the 28th precinct was originally located on 123rd Street between 7th and 8th Avenue. The 28th precinct holds a lot of, shall I say, records. The 28th precinct is located in the 6th division, and the 6th division is made up of the 25th precinct, the 28th precinct, and the 32nd precinct. When we got to the 70s, where this takes place in the 70s, we were experiencing in the city of New York over 2,000 homicides a year. There are 77 at that time precincts in the city of New York. Uh, the three precincts, which are in the 6th division, which is the 28th, the 25th, and the 32nd, we would have almost 500 of those homicides.
Wow, so 25% of the homicides in New York City were taking place in those
In
three
those three
precincts.
precincts. And in those three precincts, and out of the 77 precincts, the 28th is the smallest, we had the most. We would get, on an average, 102 to 104 homicides a year. And we did that probably for about 12 to 13 years. 12 to
So
13 years. So I would say through the 70s and into the 80s, literally 14 to 15,000 New York City people were killed, and 80%, at least 80%, by gun. And as they call it, the boundary line between Manhattan North and Manhattan South is 96th Street, and it runs from the East River to the Hudson River. So all of this was happening north of 96th Street.
right, and of course, you were policing in a time of great social upheaval, and not only in New York City, but the entire country and world. And what was going on, of course, was this youth revolution, the hippie movement, drugs, Black Power, all sorts of militancy, political militancy that popped up in the late 1960s. And so, you guys in that particular generation of police had to deal with things that, well, other policemen of previous generations didn't have to, things like the Black Liberation Army.
Well, you know, in 1972, when this happened, and this is my saying, it happened on April 14th. On April the 14th, President Lincoln was shot. On April the 14th, the Titanic went down. On April the 14th, 1972, Phil Cardillo was shot inside of mosque number 7. And I'm also going to add, in a light way, April the 14th of 2023, I have two grandsons that are graduating high school.
Oh, wow. Well, at least
So,
three terrible things and one good thing. So
so
hopefully,
now when we talk of that particular day, by the time we got to that day, starting virtually from the top down, you know, the president of the United States at that time, Nixon, was being impeached, thrown out of office, asked to leave, whatever it was. And that, believe it or not, that had an effect. And I'm not going to say on the country, it had an effect, right down in the street where everything happens, where we were working.
Now, what effect would that be? What just
Well, President Nixon was not a very popular president in the communities that I worked in. And
right?
not necessarily just Black communities or Spanish communities. I mean, there certainly were, like in Alphabet City, uh, I'm not going to call them poor white people. And what happens is that if there is a ladder that goes up to a piece of the American pie, right? These communities were always at the bottom rung of that ladder.
Hmm.
First ones to get laid off. First ones to, not get a job. But the last ones to get assistance and a huge, huge drug problem
Right.
that was carried over from the 60s. By 1972, right? In 1968 alone, uh, or in the decade of the 60s, right?
Hmm.
We, when I say we, I'm talking of people in the United States, human beings, citizens, whatever you want to say. We killed the president of the United States. In 1968, we killed the man with a dream. In 1968, we killed a senator that wanted to take us the different way, right? In 1968, I I was on the scene, a shootout, blah, 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 uh, with two soldiers from a Brooklyn family, an unnamed Brooklyn family. And that was, we were going to bring back the use of the electric chair, which it hadn't been used in a decade, maybe even more. So this was the, let's say, and the drug problem,
Right.
and the drug, and as you have pointed out, the riots, Kent State, Columbia
Just
University.
just all of a sudden, this ferment that happened in this one particular time.
Yes,
And of course, you were sort of caught in the middle of all that, almost literally, really, on that fateful day in April of 1972.
yeah.
Now, we are going to you've graciously agreed to come back for a second interview because we have so much to talk about that we didn't want to give anything short shrift. So we're going to talk more deeply about the Black Liberation Army on our second show because we're going to place it into more context by then. But this incident, the Harlem Mosque incident, which I really want to dive a little bit more deeper into, particularly filtered through the way that I kind of look at the world, which will become clearer as we go.
All
You
right.
were actually staking out that morning a member of the Black Liberation Army named Twyman Myers. Briefly, just talk about him, and then let's get right into that morning. And I'm going to show exactly where you were.
Okay. So on the morning of April the 14th, uh, we were hunkered down, and I had a team, a hand-picked team, because of the Black Liberation Army. Um, uh, I had a hand-picked team, and we were hunting, looking for, trying to capture members of the Black Liberation Army.
Now, the
Now,
Black Liberation Army, just for the audience's sake, and we're going to get deeper into this, as I said, but they were essentially a terrorist group that was killing police officers, violent, on the streets of New York City in cold blood.
absolutely. I mean, that group had no social redeeming value whatsoever. If you want to take the Panthers, you want to take the FLAN, they did have some social values, I'll call them.
Hmm.
For when they started out, the Black Liberation Army was, born to kill cops. The Black Liberation Army was dedicated to kill cops. And
Right.
they had managed by the time I got to, April of 14th, 1972 at 125th Street with a hand-picked team, they had managed to kill, at my district alone, 6 cops, 6 uniformed cops. They were white, black, Spanish, Irish, Italian, uh, uh, and they were
Right. All
all killed. They were all killed because they wore that magnificent blue uniform and they had great firepower. So once again, sitting down on that stakeout for Twyman Myers, who I knew personally from 19, I'd say 69, when I got a call in my command where I was working, and it definitely was a setup, but we're going to go more into that on our second interview. So
right. So you're here on 125th. I have this just so everyone knows. So we're looking now at the borough of Manhattan on the west side of Manhattan. Here's the Hudson River. Here's the George Washington Bridge. Here's the area of Harlem in which we were talking about, the neighborhood of Harlem. So you're on the west side of 125th Street and Amsterdam Avenue, which is right here. Now, coincidentally enough, you grew up 2 blocks south of there,
I
over
was
here.
I was born. I was born at home 2 blocks south of there,
Were these your
raised and
buildings?
raised and raised 2 blocks north of there.
Really? No, are your buildings that you lived, or are they still there? Are
Yes,
these them?
yes. 12,
Interesting.
1264 Amsterdam Avenue. Yes.
Which one is it? Do you know which one it is over here that we're looking at? Here, let me take it into
Yeah, I
2D.
think it's this one right here. Up, up, up. Come up a little bit more. A little bit more. There it is. That's 1264 Amsterdam Avenue.
So
We
you grew up
we lived,
here.
we lived on the second floor. We
Uh-huh.
were the superintendents, and it was what we call the 5-floor walk up. We were the superintendents in apartment 10, and that's apartment 10 right there where you have the arrow.
Wow, interesting. And so I mean, we could talk about this forever, but
Two blocks, yes, 2 blocks south, it has 125th Street.
so
That's where I
you
was sitting on the stakeout.
so you were sitting on the stakeout 2 blocks away. You're over here. Now, one thing that really makes me wonder, because this incident, tell the audience how this incident began. It began with a call of an officer in distress. Why don't you go a little bit more deeper into that for the audience?
Well, we had radios, and I think I should bring out that we had armament. Uh, two of them had semi-automatic carbines. I had a sawed-off shotgun that was issued to us due to the firepower that the Black Liberation Army that they had.
Right.
So we were sitting there that morning, and we played games to pass the time away. What line came from this movie? Here's
Right.
you kid, and name the 5 or 6 dead end kids.
I
With
would imagine that police work is often quite boring and
boy,
mundane.
is it ever. And the worst thing, sitting on a stakeout, you find yourself 2-3 hours, and you got to go to the bathroom. Tough luck, buddy. So we were sitting there. I had my car and 2 other cars, obviously unmarked, and we had the radios, and we had 2 bands, bands, on the radio, not musical bands, bands on the radio. One we would hear everything of what was going on north of 96th Street, which we were sitting in, and our other band only went for us. It only went between the 3 cars. So we kept one radio with that band on to know what was going on.
Right,
So
and of course, there was so many people back then who could access these police bands and radios, and they could
oh
listen
sure,
in on you guys, so you had to be
oh sure,
very
oh sure.
right.
So at about 6 or 7 minutes to 12, um, here came a call over a 1013. Now, also to set that up a little bit, Murray, the Black Liberation Army, which we will talk about, was before that they would call 1013s at a certain location, and they would time how long it took the radio car to get there.
Right.
Okay. And so also on other stakeouts, which I was not on, a 1013 was called to drag the officers off that location so that the people that they were sitting on could get away.
Right, and now you were sitting on a very, very high value target. You were sitting on one of the main terrorists of the Black Liberation Army.
At that particular time, he was the young leader. He was the young leader of the Black Liberation Army. He was all of about 21, 22 years of age, had gone to community college. His name was Twyman Myers, and I had arrested him in 1968 on a gun charge. And I arrested also the woman that was with him was Phyllis Pollard, who turned out to be a great source of information, which we'll go into later on.
Right,
So
right.
I was sitting there on Twyman Myers. At this time, he had managed to get himself number one on the 10 most wanted people on the FBI list.
Now,
And
now,
he was wanted in the shooting of six New York City police officers. Four of them had lost their lives.
and this guy was just walking the streets.
Yes,
So
yes,
one thing that struck me as quite suspicious is that you get this call, this officer in distress call to the Nation of Islam, Harlem Mosque number 7, and we're going to trace the way you drove down there for the audience's sake. We're going to do it on Google Earth. Did you ever make the connection between, like, did Twyman Myers have anything to do with that call?
no.
No, it just happened.
But
Yeah.
Manning, when the call did come over 1013, and knowing what I've just told you, how it was called to get us off the location and so forth, and along the lines like that, I only sent one car. I sent one car to go, and it could not have been 30 seconds. It was under a minute when the second call came over with shots fired.
Oh my
Now,
God.
once I heard shots fired added to the 1013, that's
That's
when I said, let's
I can
go.
imagine now. Let's trace your path to the audience for the audience's sake. Now I'm going to just quickly zoom out a little bit so we can orient ourselves. And I'm
Yes,
going to make this so it's more north south, okay? So
yes,
now the mosque is over here,
right.
116th Street and I forget what avenue, but I already have it pinpointed. You're over here. So how do we get from here to here that morning?
So the first thing I did was, I backed up and I drove across 125th Street.
Okay, so that would then be this over here. Okay.
There you go. And I encountered traffic at one point, and remember, the radio is all still and it's blaring. Cop shot, more shots fired, 1013,
Right.
and it's giving more details, especially with the address as I'm driving.
And you're
So,
getting stuck in traffic. I mean, that must have been
oh
yeah.
yes, and at one point I sort of had to go up on the sidewalk halfway to get around the bus. And it's the first avenue that I came to make a right, which I believe is Morningside Drive. I believe it's Morningside Drive. It's right alongside the park. If I'm going south, that park would be to my right, and Harlem, as we would call it, would be to my left. And I drove down there to 116th Street, and I made a left onto 116th Street, which left me 2.5, if not 3 blocks from the destination of 102 West 116th Street.
Okay, so we see that here. Here's the Morningside Drive,
That's
and
it.
there's the street that you went down, Morningside
Right,
Avenue. So then you will
right,
go here. So here to 116th, the mosque is over
right.
here. And so yeah,
Yeah,
2 or 3 blocks, like you say. So now let's take a
right.
look at this mosque now. Because it's actually still there and unbelievably.
Yes, right,
Let me just quickly get back. So this is what it looks like today.
right. The only thing that's missing The only thing that's missing from the top is the half moon with the sphere that went through it, and that is, uh, uh,
The
that denotes,
it's
that it's a Muslim
that it
Muslim
Oh, because
temple.
it's no longer it's no
No,
longer. But interestingly enough, it's the same shade of yellow it was back then.
yes, it was.
Yeah, I mean, how do you feel looking at this?
I'm okay.
Okay. So
Sure.
I want to actually go back to some of our period photographs because I want to take the story a little further here now. Give me a second. So here we have it on that day. S-
Oh
so
yeah, that's it.
right, exactly. And actually the same view that we just saw, although we were over here. But here's the top that you were saying about. Here's the thing. And so now what do you encounter when you get there?
Can you show the top?
It only goes to that part. It's the actual
Okay.
photograph is cut off.
All right. So what I'm looking at is, I, if everybody's seeing the screen the same way
Mhm,
I am coming right to left, and I come to maybe it's Eighth Avenue. I'm not sure, and I see the crowd of people, and that's how fast, and I couldn't go any further. I couldn't go any further with the car. So I got out of my car, which is my own car, by the way. I got out of my car and I started to walk down the block, the middle of the street. You see that white line? I was walking down that white line. Now, every other detective would do, would do what I did the following. As I was walking down, right?
mhm.
And at this point, at this point, I realized that it was the mosque. I had not, and I worked all those years there in the 2-8. I didn't recognize that address. And when I was going to, I saw that it was the mosque. And it's like 100 things went through my mind.
Right. I can only imagine. Whoops.
I know we got a problem here. I know we got a problem. So as I'm walking down the block, and don't forget, I'm there from 1964. This is 1972. I mean, I'm walking down the block and I'm looking to my right, I'm looking to my left, and I'm looking for that face, Manning, that I'm going to be able to come back 2 or 3 hours from now. And I know,
Right.
I'm going to know because the only way that you are a good detective is you don't get up in the morning and solve the case. You get up in the morning and you seek information.
Mm,
You operate on information.
right.
So I'm looking to the right and to the left. Sure enough, I spotted. Let's say I spotted somebody. I'm not going to say that they owed me, but they did. So yeah, so I knew that I could come back and talk there. And so now I got to the mosque. And by the way, while walking down the street, and with my team, we are at that time in 1972, we are the only white people. One member of my team was black. We are the only white people that are walking down the street. And I'm walking down the street in the following way. I've taken out my shotgun, I'm holding it above my head, and I'm walking down the street. And because of that and the firepower that we have, the crowds are sort of separating
Right.
and walking down. And I got to the mosque. And the first thing that I saw was the commander of the 28th precinct. His name is Jack Howe. And it was a first name basis, not by me, Inspector. Yeah, Randy. He said, the first thing he said, Randy, is this your case? And I said, no. And I said, what's going on? And I also observed to this day, I don't know who it was being taken away in the ambulance. I don't know if it was Louis 17X Dupree or it was Bobby 9X Hopes. I don't know.
Mhm.
I then entered the mosque, and oh yes, by that time I had ascertained from the inspector and from a sergeant that was there that no, there were not two cops shot. No, yes, there were shots fired, so forth and so on. So
N-
they put that over the
Now,
air.
now,
Now,
just for the audience's sake, what happened was this call came in that there was an officer in distress. It's called a 1013. But
correct.
then when the cops got to this location, it was the Harlem Mosque. They go in there, and then all of a sudden the doors close behind them. They're assaulted and beaten to almost to death, and one of them is shot. So that's what you were actually responding to, but you didn't actually know that at this moment, correct?
That's Manning, you're exactly
Okay.
right. So I walked in, and again, like a detective, and any other detective would do it, I walked in, I paused for a second because, you know, we, we, we didn't have DNA. We didn't have photograph. We had nothing like that whatsoever. So, you know, if you walk into the scene of where it happened, even if you pause for 5 or 6 seconds, that scene will talk to you.
Right.
It will speak to you. And what I observed was bullet holes, and I observed a lot of blood. I observed the furniture all turned upside down. I saw all of that immediately. And as I walked to the back, and I had never been in there before, and as I walked to the back, I went down the stairs. And when I saw that, saw what I saw down the stairs was not chaos. It was not. What I saw was Muslims,
Mhm.
Muslim temple members, and I saw them up against the wall, face towards the wall.
Mhm.
I observed 28 precinct cops. Well, you saw that the cops from the 25th. No, I did not, because they had already gone to the hospital.
Mhm.
So I absorbed them. Rudy, Andre, uh, Phil. I observed these cops, and they were putting handcuffs on them. And so the answer to what happened upstairs in the hall was not there. It's not there. The answer in all my homicides, or even before they turned into a homicide and the person went to the hospital, there's where the information is.
Mhm.
So I went to the hospital. I told my team, stand down. And I went in my own car and I went to the hospital. Now, when I got to the hospital, the first person that I saw there, honestly, was my dad. My dad was the head of the maintenance
Right.
department. And so when I walked in, and my dad was, this is what he was telling me. We've already got a room set up here because the mayor is on his way, and the police commission is on, and we're walking, talking. And so I get over, and Manning, I know you know what, let's say, a combat wounded, what a triage looks
Yeah.
like, where you got a mass unit, that's what it looked like.
Right.
That's what that hospital looked like. And and they all had curtains drawn around them. And the first one that I got to was Victor Padilla from the 2-5 precinct, a Spanish cop, and Ivan Negron, a Spanish cop from the 2-5. Now, the reason that they were the second police officers to enter the mosque is because the separation between the 2-8 and the 2-5 is Fifth Avenue. And they happened to be
Mm.
cruising down Fifth Avenue at 116th Street when the 1013 came over. There's no boundaries on the 1013.
Right. Right.
We had guys responding from 96th Street. So, they were the second two into the mosque. So when I got there, I saw exactly orderlies, and they were trying to hold Padilla down as he was convulsing.
Oh
He
man.
was convulsing. And like everything else under observation, I saw that Padilla did not have a gun. And that's your biggest worry. He did not have a gun. However, his partner, Ivan Negron, who took a pretty good beating, he was standing up there screaming, and he had his gun in his hand. And they got his gun, they got his gun, they got his gun. And the sergeant that I was standing alongside of him said, and I knew the sergeant, again, Randy, I said, I'll take care of it. And I walked over calmly, and I took the gun out of Ivan Negron's hand, and I gave it to the sergeant. I gave it to the sergeant. And I saw at that point, neither one of them had been shot.
Mm-hmm.
So
now, wait, I'm a little confused. Negron was holding Padilla's gun up?
No, Negron was holding his own
So there
gun.
was a gun missing. Okay,
Yes.
all right, okay.
Okay. So I then went over to the second one, and there was a cop in there who was cut by glass somehow or the other. What was happening in it, and he had not gone into the mosque. He had nothing. He was there, but he had nothing to do with
Right.
that. And then it still hurts today. And then I got to the third one, and there was Vito Navarra, Phil Cardillo's partner. His eye was closed. He was bleeding. He was bleeding from his ear. His ankle, he couldn't stand. I would later find out that the ribs were so badly kicked in that he couldn't take a deep breath, and he was bleeding. He was bleeding from the head, bleeding from the ear. And the first thing that he said to me was, Randy, they shot Philly. And that was the first that I knew that Phil Cardillo was shot. And I will always remember my answer to him. And I said, Vito, this is a hospital that has never lost a cop. We've never lost a cop. So I just looked at Vito. The nurse was in there. They were doing the best that they could. And I said, Vito, you got to come back to the mosque with me. And the nurse just looked at me, and I said, Vito, they're in the basement there. You got to come back to the mosque with me.
Right. Now, this whole time you're thinking that this is going to be, I would assume that you didn't even dream that there would be any problems securing the crime scene, that you would get back with Vito and they would be completely secured, and there'd be all the ballistics tests going on.
And one thing that I left out, Manning, was that when I did leave the mosque, right, and I used this word in testimony, it was ringed by uniformed cops. It was ringed from uniform down to the corner and around the corner. It was uniformed.
So within minutes of the actual incident, the police are there. They're securing the scene. They're ringed. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And why wouldn't they? They probably had heard, many of them, that a fellow officer had been shot. So this is one of the most serious things. Now, what happens when you get back to that mosque with Victor Padilla?
Well, first of all, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they're cursing out loud. Just remember, 6 cops have been killed right in our division, right there, shot and killed in our division there, and all the cops that are there that they know this.
Now, was anybody confused though, because this was a Nation of Islam? This wasn't Black Liberation Army.
No, the detectives knew more. The cops show up to the scene where the cops are shot, but we'll go into that a little bit more. You know. So okay, so I get Vito, and I get a wet towel. I get it, and I get that towel and I put it around his head, and I said, "Are you okay with this? Are you okay?" And he says, "Yes, yes." He is not only beaten and hurt, his partner has been shot. And this is what I got on my hands.
Right.
So we're now walking out. And I get to the big vestibule before I'm going to go to the doors. I'm not taking him out front. There's 100 cops out front in the hospital. They want to give blood. They want to do this. They're coming in. They're cursing. They're smoking. Blah, blah, blah. It's the whole number. When is this going to stop? And they're loud. So I would experience that at Harlem Hospital too when they come. But in any case, so I'm walking them out, and lo and behold, and you have to understand, for the 1968 shooting, 1968 shooting, the killing of a cop by Brooklyn, by the people from Brooklyn. I was to receive the Combat Cross, very high, also a very high, also medal, and I was promoted immediately, right?
Hmm.
And I refused to take those medals, from the police commissioner and the mayor of the city of New York. So now, when I'm walking out, there is the mayor and there is the police commissioner, and also the deputy, which is a very important position, the deputy commissioner of public relations, DCPI, they call him.
Now,
And his name was Robert Daly. He would wind up writing a book, but Robert Daly, his father was a big journalist, Manny, for the Journal News at the time.
can we go back for 1 second? Now, you said that you had already by this time refused to accept an award from Mayor Lindsay. So you already at this time were looking at Mayor Lindsay askance.
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right. Interesting. By the way, Randy, is there any way you can get a little more light going on? You're looking rather dark. I don't know if Steve can help put a little bit more light on.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, it's
Either put that on.
there we go. That's
Is that?
much better. Much better.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
So now, all right, because I wanted to make sure that your was seemingly loathing of maybe that's the wrong word, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed like you loathed Mayor Lindsay, but I thought that that was because of this Harlem Mosque incident. So you already did not like Mayor Lindsay before this.
Exactly.
Okay, so now what do you see when you get to the set?
So I'm walking out the vestibule, and the police commissioner calls me over, and I leave Vito standing there, and the police commissioner calls me over, and and I have to say this. What really struck me was that, if the police commissioner came in at 5'8" or even 5'9", Lindsay was 6'1", maybe even 6'2". You know what I'm not making fun of people who have passed on and stuff like that. They look like Mutt and Jeff, and the DCPI was there. So I go over there, and he says to me, detective, and he starts saying, everything is basically under control at 116th Street. Obviously, he's talking to somebody at 116th Street there. I would later find out it was Ben Ward that he was talking to.
Right.
Ben Ward was the highest ranking individual at the scene.
Right.
He was,
And now, so because this was made a racial incident, we just have we have to say, for the audience's sake, that Ben Ward was also an African American.
Yes, he
Right.
was, and he would later become the first African American
Police commissioner, and he was a disaster in that role. I mean, let's
no comment.
So, all right. So Ben Ward is there.
Get me in on that. So I said to him, and I testified to this. I said, well, they're still calling 1013s, because the cop is shot. There's definitely a missing gun and so forth. And he said to me, there's no riot there. And I said to him, I never said there was a riot. And he turned and said to the mayor, no, it's under control. There's no riot over there, as if I wasn't even standing
Wait,
there.
why is this guy bringing up riots when you're not even talking about riots?
He did it. And I got into trouble because I looked at him and I looked at the mayor and I said, whatever.
Now, wait, I hold on. This is really bothering me, because this incident, it almost seems like these guys had this plan already. This guy, Ben Ward, and with the mayor. Why was this guy talking about riots when you weren't talking about riots? He was
because obviously somebody of a high rank was there and was either said to him, this is a riot. It's turning into a riot. Whatever it was. Murphy, who was the police commissioner from the hospital, could not make that up. He was told that.
Now in your estimation, was there a riot going on?
Yes.
Okay, now, all right. So this is huge because your estimation there's a riot going on. You don't say anything to Ward about riots, but all of a sudden he's talking about riots, but he's saying in the negative. He's saying there's no riot here. What are you talking about riots? And then he's
Mayor.
going to
It's
the
the
mayor
mayor.
talking about no riots. It's as if these people were obsessed with the idea of there not being a riot.
And now understand also that Mayor Lindsay at this time has changed parties, political parties, and he's thrown his hat in on the primary in Florida to run to be the president of the United States. So, I mean, if you're going to have a riot, especially in a community that houses a place of worship, the temple, and Muslims, that doesn't look too
It
good.
doesn't look too good. But actually, I mean, would America really have cared?
I can't comment on
Right,
that.
right. But
I'm not a politician, and I never will
right,
be.
but here he is within what would you say this is 15 20 minutes of the incident? How long after this after
Oh, we're an
we're an
hour.
hour. Okay, so within an hour already we already have the beginnings of what can only be called politicization of this incident. They're turning it into a political event. They're saying it's not a riot when it clearly was.
Well, to just jump ahead, but I'll get back to where I'm leaving you off. Just to jump
Mhm.
ahead, all reports that came out of the 28th precinct, and it's called incident reports.
Mhm.
It's called the 61s, the DD5, an exceptional report. All of those reports, they go to the division. Then from the division, they go to the borough. And from the borough, they then go down to police headquarters. It never got past the division. They kept sending it back. And the guys that were preparing it didn't know why, because they used the word riot in there. And finally, it got down to that. Honestly, it got down to disturbance. And once they used, yes, once they used the word disturbance, it got past the division, the borough, and it went to police headquarters.
So
No, the word riot was never in there.
all right, so Lindsay's running for president. He can't afford politically to have a riot in his town. We've already had riots in Chicago. We're having riots all over the country, Berkeley, all this stuff is going on. Columbia, yes, all these things that actually really bother me because I wonder if they were socially engineered, but that's a whole other issue.
Kent
State, right? All this stuff. So he can't afford to have this. So now you have a shot policeman. You have all of a sudden this being politicized. Now let's look at these pictures of you here because this doesn't look like it was a peaceful event happening here. This looks like
go back on this picture here. No.
The one with the
Yeah, go ahead. Can you go up a little bit?
that's all.
Up. No, the other way. See that right there? See that paper there?
Yeah.
There's a brick in there. And that's what I got hit with.
Oh, this right
Oh,
here, this.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yes.
in this so-called disturbance, right?
Well, this is after now. You got to know the cops are all shot and so forth and so on. So let me pick it up, Manny. Maybe it'll answer
Sure.
some questions.
Sure.
Yeah. So I get Vito in the car, and I drive back in my own car, and there's my team. And so I have to walk Vito down. My team is helping me assist Vito, and we get to the door of the mosque. Inspector Ben Ward is standing at the door to the entrance to go into the mosque, and there's also a member of the FOI, which is the Fruit of Islam, and he's standing with two, and he does this talking, and he says, "You can't come in here." To me,
So
you can't.
all right. So the highest ranking policeman on the scene, police official, is standing with a Nation of Islam security guard, and
Right,
that guy is dictating to you, a New York City detective, that you can't go into a crime scene.
exactly.
This is unbelievable to me. I can't believe this. I mean, this is
And and the mosque is now ringed by fruit of
fruit of the loom.
the FOI. It's ringed by Muslims, and there's pictures of that. They're ringed by that. So I said to him, I might not be going in, but he is going in, meaning Vito. And there was just like a few seconds pause, and they opened up the door, and in went Vito. And I said to Vito, look, look for the cops. Look for the cops. They have the people. They have the people down there. Now,
Look for the perps, you mean? Look for the
yeah.
right.
Now, before doing that, the chief of detectives, my idol, uh, Albert Seidman. Albert Seidman came and he went into the mosque, and there was a nod between me and him, and he went downstairs, right?
Uh-huh.
I told Vito, look for the chief of detectives, that he's down there. Now, when I get there, all of the cops are not out in the street. Most of them are on the corner. They're on the corner, right? How that happened to this day, I still don't know. Now, this is very important.
Wait, what do you mean that, so what's the significance of them being on the corner? Just that they're not where they're supposed to be?
No, and once you remove them from the immediate scene, when I got there was snake dancing in the street. Two cars had been overturned. They were on fire. Stuff was coming off of the roofs, and
Okay.
and later on, our report would show it was just a disturbance.
Okay, hold on. All right. So this is getting worse and worse, Randy. This is absolutely getting worse and worse. So you have the crime scene being compromised because you have the fruit of Islam there, not allowing detectives in. You have the fruit of Islam telling a detective that he can't go in. You have cops on the corner not doing anything. Now, I'm assuming they weren't doing anything because they were ordered not to do anything.
Exactly.
So what's
Always remember, Manny, that the New York City Police Department in 1972 is a semi-military organization.
right
Everybody that was leading us in 1972 were Second World War.
now? So these,
War.
so you
If they came home in 1947, by 1967, the job is loaded.
right with these old timers from the
We are
war.
a semi-military organization.
Now,
So an order given is an order obeyed.
but it must have felt like you were walking into an episode of The Twilight Zone, because all of a sudden everything is upended. Had this ever happened in your previous experience?
No.
Now, here's an important question. Had it ever happened after this?
No.
So just on this one particular day in 1972, when a fake call comes in to about a 1013 to a mosque where you've never been, and then all of a sudden it seems like the cops were set up. And then all of a sudden now you guys are, the investigation and the immediate aftermath is being hampered, and it's being hampered by the police brass. I mean, what's going on here?
Well, all of that, all of that, what is going on here takes place in 2 hours. By 2 o'clock, so there's no time to set up this. There isn't. You're in the moment. You're doing what you're supposed to do. I mean, should I have really taken Vito? No, I should. But in any case, yeah, he goes down the basement. Now, I turned to try to find the inspector to see what happened to the cops, what happened to this. And when they opened up the door to allow Vito to go in there, I am not exaggerating. There was no crime scene. There was no crime scene. I didn't see the guy with the mop just yet. I would see him later on mopping up the blood. There's no crime scene. It was not protected. That's happening right now. I don't know why the cops are on the corner. I don't know why the Muslims are doing this. I have no knowledge of that whatsoever.
Right.
However, I am a detective. And I know it's going to be not up to me personally, but it's going to be us to put this shit show together.
Right.
So I go to try and find out from the inspector. Now, before I get to the inspector, the emergency service unit had showed up, and that is a big truck. It's got all kinds of weapons on it.
Right.
It's your emergency cops. They can handle
Right.
anything. They are the cream of the crop. I mean, they go after people that are jumping off bridges. They really do. So, and it's called Big Bertha. So Big Bertha is sitting there, and all of a sudden, over the loudspeaker, there is the highest ranking member on the scene, and his name is Benjamin Ward. He's the community relations man. That's his title at this time. And he's over the loudspeaker in no particular order. He's saying, all white cops return to your command. All cops out of command return to your command. So what this would do, if there were cops there from the 32nd precinct and from the 25th precinct, they were to return to their command.
Right. Back to their precincts, it was what you mean. So, away from the scene.
Exactly.
Right.
And all white cops. If there were white cops there from the 28th precinct, they were to leave. And so it's a semi-military organization, and it's an order given and it's orders obeyed. Now, do I think that he took that upon himself? No. Did he get that from somebody? I don't know who. And to this day, I don't know who. And I never wasted one moment of trying to figure that out, Manning, because you know what? He didn't shoot Cardillo, so I didn't care.
Yeah, but think about how socially destructive that is. That now pits you guys against each other.
No,
It didn't?
No, Manning, let me stop you right
Okay.
there. No, it did not.
Okay.
I'm walking up, and there were cops that I didn't know, and they said to me, a detective, what's a block cop? What's a block cop? And I said, no. It's a black cop. Now, in my unit, there was one black cop, and so and I'm leaving. I am leaving the scene. I am going. So as I'm walking up, and of course, if I said to those cops, look, take out the jump rope and you got to start, they would do it.
Right.
Whatever I said, without question. And I went and I looked at the black cop that was with me, and I just went like this with my two fingers, and he came with me. I'm not leaving him. Now, my investigation, a year later, I found out that there were just 12 black cops there. That's all that was left. And now, once the neighborhood heard that, and now there was a busload of people on the bus, and the bus was trapped, right?
Right.
And now bricks are coming off of the, off of the roof.
Right.
So as I get up to 116th Street, I get up to where my car is, and yes, the windshield is smashed in. They did it to my car, and now on my radio from Inspector Jack Howe, Manning, who is in charge of the 28th precinct, I get a 10-2 at 116th Street. So in other words, that's to meet him at 116th Street. I take my crew and we turn around and we walk back through what's going on in the street and stuff coming off the roof. And we get back down there. His exact words to me were, Randy, secure the roofs. Secure the roofs. And I said, you got it.
Now, was he going against orders here? Because you were ordered as a white cop to get out of there.
No. Oh, no. They ordered cops. They didn't order inspectors and stuff
Oh,
like
so they
that.
were
No.
talking about the patrolmen when they said blacks
Oh, yeah.
go away,
Oh, yeah.
whites go away, but the detectives, that wasn't part of that. Okay,
Right,
all
man.
right,
Right.
okay.
So, so I go into the building directly. It is directly across the street. If you put up the picture again of where I'm getting hit with the brick, I'll show you in that picture. That's the building right behind where D'Alessio is firing. That building there, we go in.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So I go in. Of course, there's a crowd of people in there, but we go in and we actually take the first floor. And as we get to the top of the stairs at the first floor, I leave D'Alessio with two guns pointed down the stairs, and we get to the second floor. And when we get to the second floor, we call hey, Louis, come on. And he backs up with his two guns. And as he's backing up, the crowd is following up there. But we got the second floor now secured. And now we go to the third floor. And by this time, I have two cops watching the third floor. Now we get to the roof. Once we get to the roof, we're all on the roof.
Mm-hmm.
And what we see on the adjoining roof, they were kids, 14, 15, 13, and they were the ones that were throwing the bricks off the roof. And so, yeah, they dismantled the chimney. So, and we could see it. It was bouncing off the
My
buses,
God.
bouncing off the cars. Thank God nobody got killed. And so I then took and waved my shotgun. Now, not a war story, Manning, but I was in combat in Korea.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of times, the helicopters would come in and do the best that they could with us. The helicopters fought the war in Vietnam, not in Korea.
Right.
And so when the helicopters would come in, even when I was injured, they finally got me to a helicopter. It creates a lot of dust. You have no idea. Well, we had a helicopter come in, and he was above 116th Street, and there was nothing but paper and dirt and dust from the roof and stuff like that. I mean, even we couldn't even see,
Right.
and I'm waving my shield at him. And the helicopter actually dips back and forth, that he recognized who we were, and the helicopter left. Now, I understand later on from the ground or police headquarters, they ordered the helicopter away. But for that one moment, I honestly thought that I was on some hill.
Yeah.
Right. I
This
did.
minor disturbance, as it's called. Yeah.
So now our job is done. So now we're getting ready to leave. And up is coming people. And if you just picture me as being on the roof with my team, right? In front of me is the people are now coming across the roof like this. And they're forming like a half moon, a half circle. And we're the center of it, but our backs are up against the part of the roof. Then out came an inspector, and with a man dressed in dashiki clothing with a sword. I'm not going to call his name. And he is talking to the inspector. And the inspector has a driver, which is a cop.
Uh-huh.
And he's a uniformed cop. And he walks over and he says to me, he says, we're going to search you. And I said, you're not searching me. I said, you are not searching me. And so he went to the other end to where one of the cops were, and the cops looked at me, and I hollered out, we'll open our coats. I said, but you're not searching us. I told that to the inspector.
Now,
So right away,
why is he up there with a man in a dashiki and a sword, giving
you're
you
going to have to You're going to have to ask him. You're going to have to
That
ask him.
sounds so weird.
Okay. And so we opened up our coats, and they took my weapon, the shotgun, but I dismantled it, and I kept what we call the nomenclature, the numbers.
Mhm.
I kept it on it, and he went away with that, right? And the inspector never said anything to me. And the man with that shiki, he turned, and they walked with the driver with my shotgun, which left, I would say, conservatively 50 to 60 angry people on the roof, and the six of us.
So you
And now we
so you had
and now we got to get off the roof.
Okay, now, and this is echoes of what had just happened in the mosque almost, where there was a total ambush of the cops. Cardillo gets shot, the other people get beat within an inch of their life, and then not only an hour and a half later on a roof, it's almost like you're being set up to take the same fate.
Now, I was asked, you disobeyed orders because you were told to leave the scene. And I said I was obeying orders. I was called back by an inspector from the 28th precinct to go and secure the roof. I was obeying orders, not disobeying orders. Now, this is how 1PP was handling things. This is what they were concerned about. They were concerned about that a detective said to the police commissioner, whatever, and walked away. This is what later on would be going on.
So
And we got a cop shot. He didn't die yet.
right.
So now we're going to try to get off the roof. So I said to my team, I said, look, follow me. I said, but hold your guns. Do not draw your guns. Do not do it. Don't do it. Follow me. And so we went down, and there must have been 50 people on the 3 floors, on the stairs, and on the landings. You could hear a pin drop, or you could hear what was going on outside, not inside. And we were going on. The first person that was going to sneeze, all hell was going to break loose. And we cautiously walked down. We didn't run. We walked down. We walked down. We walked down. And somebody threw a can of Coca-Cola, an empty can of Coca-Cola, and it hit us. And once it hit us, that
That
was
was
it.
it, right? Yeah.
And then, unashamedly, whoever was in front of me, I used my shotgun weapon, and I down on the head, down as fast as I could, down. I was kicking, I was doing everything. And we managed to get out into the street. We got out into the street. Now, at some point, much later on in the hospital, I was also suffering from a human bite,
Oh my God.
and I got it in the hallway. So when we get outside, and they did overwhelm us. They did really overwhelm us. We made it into the radio car, and they took an ash can, a garbage can, and they sunk it through the window of the radio car we were in. So we had to get out of that. And as we're getting out of that, and we're making our way between the parked cars and the stuff, suddenly everything went black for me.
Right.
It just went black. At the same time, in the picture, as I'm hit with the brick, D'Alessio, who would later lose his life, who was killed, not there. He's firing shots in
Yeah,
the
you could
air.
see the smoke.
I feel that I'm shot.
Uh,
I feel I'm shot.
So you're hearing
And so,
D'Alessio's gun, and you're thinking that, and
yes,
you're
yes,
associating that with your injury.
yes.
Okay.
And then the next picture, I'm sort of with it, not with it, and you can see the blood coming from me. And this is the inspector
Right
that
here.
Jack Howe, who ordered me to come back into the scene and to go up onto the roof. And if you look over here at that picture carefully over here, that mark there, that's my gun.
Wait, what mark?
And this is Louis D'Alessio, who fired the shots. This is part of my team. I'm not going to call his name.
Uh-huh.
That's part of my team. I'll tell you what he does. And so I'm by the bus here, and I'm told I'm trying to break away and stuff. I really don't remember too much of this.
Uh-huh.
So they get me onto this bus. They get me onto that bus, and I'm sitting on the bus, and I know I'm shot. And I'm saying to Louis, how bad is it? How bad am I shot? And he's saying, Randy, it's not bad. It's not this. He's not telling me I'm not shot.
Right.
I'm out. And now they're rocking the bus back and forth, right? And I'm by the double doors sitting down, and I can see the hands trying to rip open the
Oh my
door.
God.
This man here, part of my team, goes to the front, takes the bus driver out of the seat, and he drives the bus up on the sidewalk, hits the newsstand, demolishes the newsstand. They tell me there was a telephone booth there. I don't remember that. And he goes right over, and he's got us out of the immediate area. From there, I was transferred to a radio car, which I really don't remember being transferred to the radio car. And my biggest concern was I'm on my way to St. Luke's Hospital. I'm shot, and I know my father's going to
Right,
meet me.
right. That must
So when the radio car gets there, I refuse the gurney, and I'm gonna walk in, and and I made maybe 4 or 5 steps, and I went down, and then I'm on the gurney, and the next thing I know, my father's over me saying, "Son, it's going to be all right. Everything's going to be all right." And I always remember saying to him, "How's Phil Cardillo? How's Phil Cardillo?" And I was admitted into the hospital, with some bruised ribs, bruised knees, and a concussion.
right.
And I will say this right now: the concussion rendered parts of my body not workable,
Uh-huh.
and so I had to be categorized.
Oh,
And
wow.
so
S-
I was there for, I can't tell you, I guess maybe 3 days. 3 days they were there, and there's a whole story about what happens while
Right.
while I'm in there.
Everybody, you
So
should definitely pick up a copy of Circle of Six. Pick up from Amazon. Ruby, if you can put it in the chat, that'd be great. Now, so all right, so now this is just an absolutely insane story because it seems like everything is working against the police, and it's all coming from the top against you guys. And what's crazy is one of your fellow officers has just been shot, which is to me, I thought that was the biggest deal to the
and the other officers, Manning, they are seriously hurt. One would lose 30% use of his eye. The other one had a fracture in the lip and a fracture in the ribs. They were all confined to the
right
hospital.
now.
We were all there at one time.
Now, okay, so just a few more slides that I want to go through, and then we're going to end today's show because that'll be a good primer into what actually happened, and then in our next installment of this, we're going to discuss potential FBI involvement, new information that's come out about that. Way too much stuff to get into today. But one thing that really bothered me is that while you're in the hospital, this character here starts playing a role in this whole affair too. Now tell the audience who this is.
Okay, just give me a little bit of help here, and I know who that is.
Now Charlie Rangel comes on the scene.
Absolutely, Charlie Rangel is in the basement of the mosque, and he's literally calling the shots.
Right, and it says here that with the arrival of Mr. Farrakhan and Congressman Charles Rangel, right? So now we have Farrakhan and Rangel hanging
In the basement.
hanging out with each other in the basement, and they started screaming invectives at the officers and demanded the removal of the police officers from the mosque. So now you have Charles Rangel, a congressman. He isn't a member of the police force. And you have
Yes.
Minister Farrakhan telling you to leave the basement. What happens at that point?
Well,
Now,
well,
you weren't there.
Se-
You weren't there. Just
no,
right.
no,
Okay.
no. Seidman absolutely refuses. And what they say to Seidman is that we can't guarantee your safety. We cannot guarantee your safety. Remember, there are no cops up on the street. And so what Seidman does is he calls Michael Card, who would also become the police commissioner. He calls him down at 1 pp. And look, you know, let it all hang out. There isn't a cop that I didn't work with that didn't call 1 pp the Puzzle Palace.
Right.
So he calls 1 pp and he speaks with Card. And he says to Card, I need reinforcements. And Card says, no. And Seaton pleads, send me reinforcements. And Card says, no. And on the second phone call, when he calls Card again, because they can't guarantee the safety here, we got prisoners here, Card tells him, leave the mosque.
So now
And at that
ultimately,
point,
yeah.
at, yeah, and leave the mosque. Now, here, leave the mosque without the prisoners. So what Seidman does is he makes a deal with Congressman Rangel, and Congressman Rangel agrees that if Seidman and the cops leave, right, that these people, and the number has always fluctuated between 14 and 16, these people will be brought to the precinct. And they agreed at this point they're not going to bring them to the 28th precinct, which basically is the heart of Harlem.
Uh-huh.
What we're going to bring them to the 24th precinct, which is located down on 100th Street.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that's like 24 blocks away from the scene. And so they agreed that that's what they were going to do. So at that point, Seidman leaves the mosque. And when he gets out in the street, there is still debris being thrown. There's still being thrown. And Seidman says, this case will never be solved. And Seidman leaves. And of course, that afternoon, the assistant district attorneys, the chief of detectives, the DCPI, uh, who would Daly, who would later write the book, they're all waiting for the prisoners to come in. No prisoners came in. It's too long a detail right now.
Right.
We'll go through it to tell you how two of the people did come in. They didn't come in. They were brought in because they were aided cases. And of course, one of them turns out to be 2 years later, 2.5 years later, I get him as the
As the
shooter
shooter.
of Phil Cardillo. So I'll explain that to you.
The next
Later
time.
on. Those
Absolutely.
people, those people never showed up, never any identification, and we'll go into a hot topic called the Blue Book.
Yes, I think that this is a great place to leave it here because we've set the stage, we've set the scene. We've talked about this very strange incident where it starts out weird because you're called on a fake 1013. The cops go in there. The door is closed behind them. They're assaulted and beaten within an inch of their life, and one is shot and later is deceased. When you guys are go to secure the site, you're basically, well, shit can, to use a term, please excuse my French, by seemingly the top people in the NYPD. Nobody seems very interested in solving the case. In fact, it seems like everybody's interested in getting you guys the hell away from the scene and taking orders from people like Minister Farrakhan and Charlie Rangel. So this is very weird to me, and I think that this is a great place to leave it because we have so much more to talk about potential FBI involvement and the Blue Book. And of course, I want to go deep into this guy, Mayor Lindsay, who I think I'm going to be showing you some things that you maybe have never heard about this guy before, about who he associated with and the organizations who put him into power and what social experiments they were running all over the world. Randy, it's going to be very exciting. So any last words for today before we take it on out?
Um, first of all, thank you, thank you. You know, I would say seeking what happened, not by somebody, writing it or so forth and so on. And remember, a lot of things that I did or didn't do, I didn't do it alone.
Hmm.
I certainly didn't do it alone. People like Nick Cirillo and John Lafferty, I mean, Cliff Fenton, detectives, I mean, believe me, I learned from them. Believe me, uh, and I will mention I will mention I will mention their names. And we're talking about coming up on April the 14th. We're talking about something that I believe that happened 51 years ago.
Right, right. And to this,
And the titles that they've given to this, the blackest day in the police department, the day of so forth. And yeah, it really was a day, just looking back in hindsight, it really was a day that, the police department as a whole were just put out. Forget
right,
it.
it sounds like your role and you guys were just
Oh,
diminished, not
oh,
only diminished to the public, but also diminished in many ways to the eyes of your fellow cops, just with the disgust at the brass at what was going on. But this is
you know,
this is things that we're going to talk about in episode 2, Randy. I want to say thank you so much. Please hang out today. Please hang out just backstage while I take the audience on out, because I want to say goodbye to you off the air. And great show. Thank you so much. We set the scene and we're going to carry on episode number 2. So, Randy, thank you so much. We'll see you in a minute backstage. All right, guys. Well, great show. Of course, always amazing to have the firsthand people who were involved in this. It's great to talk to newspaper reporters and to book authors, but you know what? It's always the best to talk to people who were actually there and who experienced it firsthand. So this is a strange story that I have my teeth into. This Harlem Mosque incident is really bothering me. There's something about it that, well, I actually have put my finger on it, and we're going to explore these theories of mine with Randy in upcoming episodes. But in part 2, we're going to talk about the shadowy figure of the FBI behind all of this, as well as the famous blue book that Randy was never allowed to see when he investigated the murder of Officer Phillip Cardillo. So, everybody, I want to say thank you so much for hanging with us today on episode 1 of this great deep dive into the Harlem Mosque incident with Detective Randy Jurgensen. It was my pleasure, and we will see you on the next episode. Thank you so much, guys.